The haze of the moon's ghostlight illuminates the words and sketches on your notes as it bleeds through your window. The charcoal eyes of 6 victims, each found dead in the Ash District, stare up at you, imploring you to find their killer. In your hand, you hold one of the crude carvings left behind at each scene. A figure of a woman carved from the charred wood of an ebony tree was found in the left hand of each victim. It is the only thing known to connect these poor unfortunates and undoubtedly placed there by the killer. A sudden rapping pulls you from your thoughts. Beneath your door, someone has slid a letter. You know the words therein before even reading them. The killer has struck once more. Hello! Let me calm the music down a little bit. Welcome, my fays and fiends, to this delightful one-shot as part of our October Spoopfest. Today, we are playing Swarm by Ghostlight. It is a GM-less solo, or can be done duo, game. It is made by, I hope I say this right, Yui Garon, how they go by on Twitter, as well as they're on itch, where you can find the game there. For everyone watching this live on Twitch, if you actually use the command Ghostlight, so exclamation point Ghostlight, that should cause a bot to drop the link directly to the itch page. And we do have the creator in chat, so hello, and I hope I do your game well. Thank you for joining. And yeah, if you are new, for anyone who is new and watching has never heard of Ghostlight or anything else around it, it is using the base of the Ironsworn RPG, which those who are familiar with my channel know I play that game usually on Wednesdays. So this is a nice little disruption of my usual for me here. And I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Natalie. I am a tabletop player. I enjoy playing, I play D&D a lot. I play on channels like Ghosts, or I almost like Ghosts. So much Ghosts going around. I go by Ghost Candle on most places on the internet. But yeah, so I'm here to play Swarm by Ghostlight as part of a spooky tabletop game. So disclaimers around that is we may get into kind of more spookier elements, supernatural elements, maybe more horrific depending on how I feel the story gets directed to. So just a heads up, just in case if that kind of stuff isn't quite your cup of tea. Yes, I said it right, but Young or Matthew is also fine. Okay, Matthew. I wasn't sure if you wanted your full name announced, but thank you, Matthew. But yes, okay, so we will jump in shortly. I don't know if I have any. Oh, I know what my disclaimers are going to be beyond just the horror element disclaimer. I'm not paid or anything to do any of this. I just think it sounded like a really fun game, and I love Ironsworn, so doing something different, and this being more of a Victorian London-esque setting, though in their own world. I was really pumped to try this out, so very excited to try it. And yeah, so why don't we get the promo video going, and then we'll jump straight on in. So a woman walking down the streets of the Ash District. a wide gait to her very quickened steps, hair up in a loose Gibson bun, glass is flashing in the passing of lantern lights. Her heels click on the cobblestone, wet by recent rains and damp mists that enclose the city that is Moonanthiston. Her pace is quick, for she is a detective, one being called upon, one with a letter in her hand, being told that the killer that she has been tracking down has struck once more. She turns down to an alley just past a rather derelict vice den. And there she sees a familiar figure, one of a man named Sergeant Colley. He is on scene, and she can see within his hand the familiar effigy that they've been collecting from each victim at each scene, that ebon wood woman, charred and blackened, held in his hand as he is looking it over. The sergeant turns his head at the sound of Miss Clark's heels dashing down, and he says, "Ah, Veronica's a Clark. Glad you got her letter." Veronica, standing straight and proper, as one does, comes down the alley, her eyes set on the body before her, and just giving a polite nod of recognition to Sergeant Colley. And she says, "Yes, as soon as I got the letter, I knew I had to come right away. Same MO as before." And the sergeant says, "Yep, we found this effigy in the left hand as the others. But besides this," and he points down towards the other right hand, just off to the side, there's a shining metal key. He says, "We found that on their body as well. This is Alicia. She was living in the apartments nearby. Seems that she hasn't moved anywhere. We discovered her in this alley, just off of Cedar Street here, but we haven't gone too much further because we figured, you being the detective expert on these cases, you may wish to know." And Veronica kneels down, and we're gonna try and do a wits roll to see if maybe there's any other clues that Veronica may pick up as she looks over the body and the immediate area around her. Unfortunately not. As Veronica tries to take a good look, it's just a little too dark in this alley. She can't really see any signs of maybe any struggle that has happened here, or any other potential information, any dropped items. But let's see, since we did a full-on miss, we will roll on our pay the price. So let's see what we get. A 56. A waste of resources. So Veronica begins pulling out different things from her little investigator's bag. She tries to light up some tinder to get more illumination to maybe help her in this investigation. However, the moisture just from this really damp, misty night is making it hard to strike a spark to get any sort of flame going. And in her midst of tumbling through her bag, she doesn't quite notice some of the items that sort of dropped out. So we'll see how that affects her later. But now she has damp a dampened tinderbox. But with a huff, she picks up the key that was directed to her and looks it over. She turns to the sergeant and says, well, Sergeant Colley, will have your men figured out where this key may belong to? And the sergeant shrugs, says, well, top potential is possibly her apartment or whatever quarter she may be living. Maybe even one of the rooms in the vice den, since it is right on the other side of this wall, and he kind of taps the brickwork. And Veronica gets up, steps back a little bit, looking up and down the alley. One thing to note, as she then turns and looks up towards the sky, the moon is bright, it is full, and the fine cracks of light almost dripping off of it, the ghost light. And in this world, very supernatural things can happen, exist. Death is not something obscure, and ghosts aren't something that is just left to fairy tales. Veronica just kind of shakes her head, contemplating. Let's see. Well, maybe someone who runs the Vice Den may know who Alicia is, and if they happen to know where this key may be from, if it is a key for the Vice Den, let me go maybe take a look inside, make sure, possibly protect the body, maybe if there's no other evidence around, at least take what you can back to the department, and I'll come back if I have any further details that need to be looked upon. And Veronica quickly turns pivot without really getting much of an answer or reply from Carly before she starts walking and looking for the doorway to the Vice Den. I'll just do a roll to see if it takes her a while to find the right place. Just because I like rolling dice. Alright. It doesn't take Veronica even hesitation to find where the appropriate door is. She comes back to the main street of the Cedar Street, turns, and heads straight for this door that's all blackened, keeping the remnants of what was once the history of the Ash District, having once suffered a great fire and rebuilt from. This door very much has that similar ebony wood that's all charred and blackened that has been maintained. The only things new upon it would be the hinges and the doorknobs, and even then they have seen some wear since its replacement. She opens up the door, and let's see what details in this space may be present. As the smell of smoke and florals and opium just start to kind of drift from the doorway as she enters. 5. It is incredibly cold in this place. And yet it makes perfect sense for it being derelict. It's very drafty. She can hear just the very soft whistle of the wind through the cracks from around the door frame, from around the window frames, and the creaking of the timbers and woods as she takes her stride inward. Before her, let's see who they are. Before her, she sees a woman standing there. She has her hair all down, but it's all wavy and curled. Some very red fabrics of a bodice and long sleeves, just kind of billowed out and puffed. The woman has a long holder for her cigar, and she takes a long drag from it as she peers towards Veronica. And doesn't really say much. She kind of just gives her an up and down look. And let me see what... I got her name, but let's see what her mind is saying. Friendly. She gives a friendly smile as the smoke puffs out from her nostrils. She says, "Ah, welcome. Are you interested in a room, or maybe you'd like to join the social? How can I help you?" And Veronica strides up to the desk and kind of trying to compose herself on what she's going to say. She says, "Hello, madame. I'm actually here looking for information. My friend Alicia has gone missing. I thought maybe she was here. She gave me this key. I wasn't too sure if it belonged here." The woman takes a look, the key from Veronica, takes a look at it, and let's see. Let us do... No, let us first do a compel roll. I'm going to use some of my Ironsworn stuff here. All right, a weak hit. So the woman very kind of elegantly takes the key, looks it over. She says, "This mayhaps belong to one of my rooms here. You said friend Alicia. She was supposed to come by earlier today, but hasn't stopped by." Hands the key back to Veronica. And we'll take a second as Veronica kind of analyzes this woman, taking in her features, her reactions to the words, to the mention of Alicia. And with a cocked brow, Veronica says, "Well, if this key mayhaps belong to one of your rooms, maybe I mayhaps take a look around. Alicia is mighty forgetful of things, and I just want to make sure some of her more precious items weren't left behind." And Alicia... she says, she's quite the spirited soul. And the woman nods, takes another long drag of her cigarette, and she replies, "Well, I can walk you to the room that I believe this belongs to. Usually we are very, very thorough about cleaning our spaces, making sure nothing is left behind, so it's a little unusual. But please follow me." And the woman walks out from behind her desk into the darkened hallways behind a red velveteen curtain. And Veronica quickly follows in step. And as they walk through this narrow hallway, just that draftiness still whistling winds coming through, and the smell of various smokes and incense. And other smells, some familiar to Veronica, but some not, are just wafting through the different doors. And she can even see some trails of smoke curling up from underneath door frames. But the madame brings her to one room, pivots on her heel, and puts out a hand, in which Veronica in turn hands her that key. The madame puts the key in, jiggles it a little bit, and it takes a moment to get it to seemingly fit, but a good clink and creak as the door edges open. Veronica steps into the space, and we're going to try and do a gather information roll as we investigate this area, asking the madame questions, and maybe pick up any traces or a track. So let's see what happens. Okay, a weak hit. We go into this space. There is kind of rough-looking velveteen pillows and a long lounge chair. There is very stout, rounded, black ebony wooden tables, all of them with scuffed up marks, burn marks, and drink rings upon them. For the most part, it seems the room fairly clean, maybe recently cleaned. Veronica starts stepping about, looking around furniture, tossing the pillows a little bit, seeing what crevices she may find. And Madame kind of just leans on the door frame and speaks, saying, "What did you say your friend had lost?" And Veronica, trying to keep her composure as best she can, just kind of looks up at the woman and says, "Oh, she thought she may have left her ring here." And Madame, with though there's still a friendly smile upon her lips, her eyes are narrowing. She says, "And she asked you to come instead of herself. I mean, we were expecting her to come earlier, as I said." And Veronica nods, realizing maybe some of the holes starting to form in her little persona here. Yes, well, since she has gone off somewhere, and I've been waiting on her as well, I thought maybe at least until I can hear from her, I will find her missing ring. So what information can we see? So something in the space is complicating our investigation. Well, the space is fairly clean, and maybe too clean for what it is, especially in such a derelict area. Veronica definitely notices that off the spot. There is repetition of the ebony wood, but that is nothing new for this area. That's something that can be pretty common for the Ash District. She does notice some deeper gash marks in the wood that seems a little more recent. And maybe I'll roll. Yeah, I'll make a roll to see if we find a clue. Do a 50-50 chance. Oh, this uses a d6. Hold on, let me Let me roll a d6. We don't need to roll 100. Let me roll a d6. Oh, there we go. Okay, we needed a 4 or greater, so unfortunately we do not find a clue here. So Veronica huffs a bit, standing back up, brushing down her shirt and jacket. Takes another quick pass around the space. Says, well, I'm sure if you had found the ring while cleaning, you would know you had it, so maybe Alicia was just mistaken. And the madame nods as Veronica comes back towards the doorway. She says, well, if you have any news of my friend, it seems she must come here often enough for you to recognize the name. Well, let me know. And the madame kind of nods a little bit and moves aside to let Veronica out. And she follows in behind Veronica as she walks us toward the front of the building and leaves the establishment. It's not having any luck on getting clues, are we? Well, the key matched the vice den. Well, let's go back to the alley, maybe. Maybe we can do another more in-depth look around and see what could be present. So Veronica goes back around and pivoting into the alleyway. There is now officers just stationed to make sure no one walking the streets may come down such a way. And the sergeant's still looking over the scene. They seem to be packing things up slowly. But Veronica walks down saying, Sergeant Carley, any further clues or things that you may have found to help in the investigation? And the sergeant turns his head back up, replies, Detective Clark, we were just preparing the body to move, and the body is now covered in a very kind of off-white, large piece of fabric. But there is now some lanterns present as other officers have come in to help clear the scene and bring everything to the department. But let's see if now with maybe some more light, we can gather some new information in the area. My dice aren't happy with me tonight. So further issue with our investigation. As now Veronica takes a look around and more light illuminates the space from the lanterns. She can see the very visible form underneath the blanket of Alicia. She could tell within where the blanket kind of starts meeting the ground that there is redness pooling up. So something must have attacked her physically. And as she goes back over, she takes in a breath, seeing if maybe there's any hint of scent that matches the inside of the vice den. There is a ever so slight hint of it. But it's hard to be sure because there seems to be just a smell of smokiness that's kind of masking other things. So it's hard to determine if it is for sure the same smells as the vice den or just a standard smoking happening. But she looks around and looks to the streets. They are uneven, just undulating cobblestone and road, but they are well lit. There is crowds of people, and some people kind of are slowing down as they pass the officers and trying to peek down the darkened alleyway. There is a lot of mud that now Veronica is noticing as she looks down towards her feet. There is a lot of mushy mud and slop just kind of built up in the alleyways, and that's not anything new. But it does make it complicated to try and find any tracks, especially as there seems to be a lot of movement that has happened here. But she sighs, finding that just like the others before Alicia, there's not very many clues or signs that seem to be pointing to anything specific, any track that she might be able to pick up. And yet it's also the closest she's been to picking a thread. A cool wind blisters down the alleyway, the lanterns flickering and almost creating a ghostly, undulating chorus of shadows and light. There may possibly be at least others in the area that may know who Alicia is, others that might be able to answer her questions. So as a little crowd is forming at the mouth of the alleyway, folks asking, what is going on? Was there a murder? As even from the street, that white cloth can be visibly seen, and of course having officers present isn't exactly the best of signs. But Veronica steps towards the crowd, and she starts keeping an eye to see if anyone in particular might give a sense of possibly not just curiosity, but maybe eagerness about the situation, eagerness to know, or maybe kind of the rumor mill type of character. So let's see if we can spot anything. We keep rolling wits, I believe. Yes, lots of wits. We keep getting such weak hits. It's a little difficult. There's a lot of people muttering and clamoring on about, many folks speaking up to the officers, trying to get their own information on what the hell is going on. And Veronica is trying to walk around. Some folks are reaching out to her, trying to stop her, to ask what she's doing there, the kind of information like that. But she does catch sight of one person that was in the crowd trying to look, and as they meet her gaze, they quickly pivot on foot and start walking away. So we're now going to try and move our way through the crowd to chase after this individual. And with a complete miss, it's just too difficult to make through the crowd. A lot of people are kind of stepping in the way to make inquiries about what was going on in the alley. And she keeps trying to push and push and push. And as she comes around between some folks and into the more open street, the figure that she caught notice of has already disappeared elsewhere. Easily could have gone down one of the other darkened alleyways. And once in there, it's a maze of just darkness and stone. So there's no way to follow them down there. Miss Veronica Clark, Detective Veronica Clark. Let's use her proper job title. Is not having a very, very good time. But of course, with this being the 6th victim, 7th victim, I believe 6th victim, taking this long to find any clues. It's possible that whoever is doing these crimes, especially with the presence of the effigies, that maybe it could be one of the more ethereal kinds of folk that have been found lingering in these areas. It isn't uncommon to see a potential ghost. They are a thing that can happen, but it is rather odd. And maybe she needs to see someone that can have a bit more insight than Veronica is capable of, though she is a occult, specifically investigator. I'm going to take a look over the recent effigy. So she pivots quickly back around once more, going down the cobblestone alley until the mud kind of sloshes up at her heels. She takes a look at the evidence that's put aside to be binned up. And we'll try and gather information once more. Come on, I made wits my best stat. Give me a good hit. Finally. She looks over the effigy, and something she notices on it that she doesn't recall on the other ones. There seems to be a little etched marking, not one she's familiar with, but there does seem to be an etched marking on this effigy. And it sort of looks like a Y with a small little X crossed through at the center of the elongated tail of it. And the limbs of the lettering seems to expand out longer at the top, so they kind of reach it almost like a tree. So she takes note of that. And with that strong hit, let's see if maybe she spots a clue in the area. Let's see what kind of clue we can pick up. Roll a d10. A 9. Injury. All right, she pauses and looks back towards the covered body, remembering that she just noticed some blood, and goes back over and lifts up the blanket. And as she looks over, kind of very gingerly moving the hands and lifting parts of clothing, seeing where this injury, where this blood may be, she does catch just kind of right in the collarbone. She sees the big pooling of red. And as she moves the cloth down, seeing some threadings that are loosened as though something was pulled out, she does catch a rather sizable wound, maybe the size of what would be the correct term for money? A coin, like a big silver coin. So something really punctured in, through, and down. And Veronica takes a moment, kind of trying to simulate what something may do that sort of damage to her. Sergeant Colley kind of looks back over and says, Detective Clark, did you pick up something? And Veronica looks up to him and she says, what was your interpretation of this wound here on her? And the sergeant kind of pauses a bit, scratches at his stubble that's all across his jawline, kind of just starting to grow in a little bit. Says, Well, it seems like a stab wound of sorts, some sort of puncture, but we haven't gone into too much further than that. We wanted to wait until you took a good look, and of course to take her back to the department so she can be processed thoroughly. And Veronica is still kind of focused, simulating a stab. She goes back, looks at the effigy. There doesn't seem to be any blood or anything on the effigy itself, and it's not pointed in a way to make a stab wound. It's just kind of an almost crude carving of a woman. Have all the victims... Were all the victims women? I'm going to do this as a 50-50. Let's see what the Oracle says. Ah. All the victims were women. And as Veronica starts processing this, she stands back up, taking out her notes and to make her observations written down. Stands back up and pivots to the alleyway and goes to walk further in. Since not much more information is towards the front, you figured maybe there might be some loose things towards the back. So far, going over our clues so far, we've had a key which matches a room in the Vice Den. The Madame in the Vice Den seems to know who Alicia is, and had mentioned she's supposed to be in there earlier in the evening. Upon returning for a second look at the body, there was a hint of smoke and other scents on Alicia's body, but nothing that we can fully pinpoint directly to the den. But there is a marking on the effigy that Veronica now notices, and she has recalled that all the victims are women. And of course, the effigy is a carved woman figure. There's still a lot of variables left open. Either this could be an individual targeting women specifically, and if it's having occult natures, it could be either a ritual of sorts, with the presence of that styled effigy, and it's made from the same kind of ebon wood of the district. That's the other clue that we have as part of our investigation here. Made of the same wood that is charred throughout the Ash district. And that wood was present in the door as well as many of the furnishings of the Vice Den. Making all my notes as Veronica. Well then. As she gathers up her thoughts, she goes back to the crowd. Maybe at this point there's someone that has been nosy and may want to give up some information. So I'm gonna try and do a compel roll. See if maybe we can persuade anyone in the crowd. Hopefully. So Veronica goes back to the crowd. Some of them, having before been adamant about asking questions, are a little more deterred. The crowd is thinning out. But as Veronica comes back, there is still people lingering in almost waiting for any potential change, or at least waiting to see the scene cleared out. But there is one woman there. She seems to have be very curious about it all. But she's standing there and she catches Veronica's look. And she doesn't make a move to run away or anything like that other person. She seems to stay there as Veronica approaches her. And Veronica's, sorry, we are doing an investigation to what's going on in here, but do you happen to have any information on what has happened? Were you, have you overheard anything? Have you seen anything? Let's see how likely she may know something. Nice. The woman nods. It's like, oh, I was just across the street. I saw a bunch of figures walking about earlier. But it seemed like there was some sort of exchange. I didn't think it was something quite like this. And Veronica nods, taking out her notebook and pen. She's like, all right, well, ma'am, what is your name? And the woman says, oh, yes, my name is Minerva. I didn't want to do it with that. And Minerva, the way she looks, she's very tattered clothes. They seem to be quite muddied, quite dirty, a lot of patchwork going on, a lot of loose stitching happening for repairs. Mismatching of socks and of gloves that are all worn with figures showing, a well-worn, almost oversized jacket that cover up her very petite figure. And she's very gaunt in face, very shallow sockets, paled skin, but very weathered looking. But Minerva says, well, I could maybe give some more information if and she kind of holds out her hand as a gesture to possibly have an exchange of information for money. Not a new thing. Not a new thing at all. But Veronica kind of gives a nod, reaches into her own pockets and gives a few pounds of money to the woman. And the woman quickly pockets it and kind of takes a leer around the area. She says, well, to be honest, I didn't hear very much from across the way. But I did see an individual clad in all black and in a cloak. I think I actually saw them earlier as well, but they were having a conversation with that woman just coming out of the vice den, and they were leading her down through the alley. They disappeared for a little bit before a bit of a yell echoed out, and the woman seemed to be yelling louder before it was very quickly silenced. Nothing new for the area, honestly, but, you know. So we got information of a cloaked figure that was stalking Alicia from the Vice Den. Interesting. All right. Alicia, not Alicia, Veronica. She closes up her notebook, thanks the woman, and the woman kind of does another hand pass forward for more coin. But Veronica kind of turns a bit and says, well, if you have any further information, a further exchange can be had. But thank you for your cooperation. And she turns back towards the vice den. There is something hidden in there. She wants to get to the bottom of it. So the Veronica comes back towards the door and creaks it open once more, entering the darkened space. Madame is still there. She's kind of just flipping through a paper, still dragging on her cigarette. And she takes a long drag and looks back up towards Veronica. And she nods. She says, well, you're not really a friend of Alicia, are you? I've been seeing what's going on outside the door. And Veronica kind of sighs a bit, nods, steps forward. Yes, I'm actually Detective Clark. And now that we are getting some more information, we have reason to believe we need to do some further investigation within your establishment. And Madame keeps a rather relaxed posture, but does sit up a little straighter. It's like, detective. Well, you are free to at least go back to that room if you must. And let's see if Veronica can get any further information out of this person. We're gonna try and do maybe a shadow roll. Maybe we'll try make a little lie or swindle this woman into believing what we may have to say. Sweet. Well, madam, since a lot of our clues from investigation as well as witnesses have directed us to your establishment quite well, and there's been possible sighting of who may have dragged Alicia into the alleyway and who may have been the individual that has rather brutally slain her. I am rather concerned of your potential involvement, so I assume you will give us your fullest cooperation. And the Madame does shoot up a little bit at that. And because we got a strong hit, we get a momentum, our first strong hit of the night. And we can add a +1 for our gather information on our next one. So the Madame now gets up. It's like, well, I do not wish to be implicated or suspect in any way towards what may have happened. You said Alicia was murdered. Oh dear. All right. Yes, I will show you around once more. Follow me. And Madam quickly whisks Veronica back into the depths of the vice den, the wind whistling through the space, almost sounding like creaks and moans, whipping up the smells of smokes from underneath the doorways from the other rooms. And we are actually going to take a pause here as a quick little break. Tough start. The dice really did not want me to find a lot of clues, but we eventually got there. It's the fun thing about trying to decide how you want to approach this kind of game is deciding, what would make the best narrative sense here? What could be really fun to explore? And this is just our information part. We're going to have to start getting into the potential of what could possibly come after. But we are going to take a quick little break, a little reset, so I can do a couple of little things off to the side here. Probably about 10-ish minutes. But please feel free to hang around, check out things. Once again, for all those watching live here on Twitch, if you do the command code Ghostlight, my little bot will drop the link directly to the Swarm by Ghostlight itch page. And then if you're watching this as a VOD later on YouTube, I will have all that stuff in the descriptions down below. But for now, also shout out those that followed me, which Yui Garon followed me, of course, our creator of this game. So thank you so much. And that's it for our activity updates. Captions are good. I also got captions on screen, so yay, working. Everything's working. It's always great when everything's working. Kind of scared that everything's working right now. But yes, quick hydration break, bathroom break, whatever you may need. And then we'll be right back at it to see if our detective Veronica Clark can figure out what the killer may be up to and maybe catch them, find anything about them. Who knows? We'll be right back. See you in a bit. All right. Hope y'all had a nice little reset. Got hydration of your choice. Bathroom break, maybe a pet break. I went and petted my cat and gave her kisses because pets are delightful. I cannot, whenever I see my cat, I have to pet her. All right, so why don't we get back into our story here? Our detective, Veronica Clark, she's been having a lot of trouble trying to figure out the recent serial killer that's been terrorizing the city, specifically in our Ash district here. Their MO seems to be leaving these wood effigies made of ebon wood that's all charred and blackened, matching a lot of the wood that was left in the Ash district after a great fire that had taken over about 100 years ago, and leaving all the wood timbers just purely charcoal almost. With the most recent murder of Alicia found in the alley behind a rather derelict looking vice den just off of Cedar Street. Veronica was on this case, trying to dredge up any clues. However, just not really happening. Some of her items ended up getting a rather moisture damage going on. It even took her a while to really assess what was going on with the body from coming back a couple times. But right now, we have entered the vice den, now kind of making a rather harsh half-lie almost. The Madame could be a major suspect still, but Veronica did push kind of a narrative that she was under heavy suspicion, and that she was called out, which she was not. But it worked in her favor, and now the Madame has brought her back through the rather drafty, cold corridors of the vice den, and she's going over the kind of things that they do here. That there's nothing illegal going on, of course. However, we're a vice den, you know, we just supply fine wines and fine smokes and herbs, the kind of things that folks would pay great money for, that everybody can participate in, of course, well, of age, of course. And the Madame does go on in that kind of line of talking, really trying to flourish the elegance of the place, even though the very visuals of it does not reflect that. The wallpaper seems like it almost kind of was slapped up to cover up the old burnt of the walls, some of them peeling at the seams, scuff marks on them. The floor heavily covered in almost like a layer of soot, as though barely mopping or sweeping the floors. And only movement in the patterns of where people have been coming up and down the corridors or in and out of doors. Heavily smoked, kind of almost encasing the very fabrics and space of the walls here. But Veronica takes note between what she's seeing and what Madame is saying. There is that repetition of this old ebon wood being used throughout the space. A lot of the newer built establishments are using newer woods, of course, but this one seemed to really lean into the aesthetic. So Veronica points it out to the woman, says, I noticed you have a lot of the old infrastructure still. Wouldn't this be a violation of some sort of, I don't know, building code? Wouldn't you say? And the Madame kind of stops for a moment and turns and kind of looks at Veronica before looking at the kind of various wooden beams and doorways and such. Says, well, not everyone can afford the finer things. We decide we need to embrace the history here. I mean, as devastating as the fire was, it's still very much a part of the cultural life here now, and we might as well just take it in. And, you know, the burnt smell of the wood doesn't seem to interfere with all the other smells that fragrant through our space. Yes. And she opens up the door to the room that Alicia had the key for, that now Veronica carries. And Veronica steps in and is like, it is interesting. Of course it is. And she looks about the space one more. I'm going to do one more roll to see if she does notice anything else that may have changed since she stepped into this room. Well, just to see. And we're gathering information, which we did a strong roll. That gives us a +1 in this. Haha! Okay. That was a massive miss. So, the madame nods and kind of very trying to be almost overly friendly now. She's like, well, detective, if you want any drink or smoke or anything while you are waiting for inspiration to strike, I suppose, feel free to let me know. I'll be at my desk. And she closes the door with a nervous chuckle, and the sound of her heels on the creaking wood dissipate down the hall. But Veronica kind of takes a seat down at the lounge, looks around. And as her eyes begin to fully adjust to the space, 61. More supplies spent. She starts pulling out different supplies. She puts out some dusting powders and brushes. She pulls out some more notepads and some ink and charcoal, and she gets to try and maneuver about the space. But as her bag is sitting up, she accidentally hits the table. It is quite low and a little unusually so for what she's used to. So she very quickly hits that table, and it sends a good amount of her supplies tumbling. The bits of charcoal break apart once they hit the wooden floor. Some of the ink spills out a bit from underneath the cap onto her papers. And with a frustrating sigh, she just crumples up their papers and tosses them. And instead of sitting on the lounge, she now takes a kind of a kneeling seat on the floor. There's something being hidden. She knows it. There's something that just does not want to be seen, that is obviously very aware of what they're doing and what the threads could potentially be. But this is the closest she's ever been. And as she sits there, frustrated, she misses at what point the room gets cold. An icy cold, sending a chill up her spine, and the feeling of something almost crawling up her skin. She can't help but shiver and brush herself down. The room, she almost thinks it got darker, and she looks to the lamps and she tries to turn the knobs to make the flames a little brighter. But as she walks around the room to each one, it just stays consistent. There is no change in the light. She steps back, going to the middle of the room, kind of crunching across the papers that she crumpled and threw to the floor, and looks around. She can hear the whistle, that odd wind whistle passing through the space. In a moment of thought, she plucks a loose hair and holds it up and holds her breath, waiting to see what drafts may be in the space. And let me see if Oracle agrees. Oracle agrees. And the hair drifts a little bit. She moves away from the door and stands still for a moment to reset, and she sees that it drifts away in a direction from one of the walls. She goes up and approaches it, and much like the corridors, the wallpaper matches in the same way, this almost gaudy damask pattern of embossed, shiny material, but is very weathered, as though it's kind of just been left to be exposed to smoke and ash, but it's all kind of peeling away. She starts to kind of press along the wall to see if she can start feeling out where that draft is coming from. And let's roll again to see if she can find it. She does. So she glides her hands along the wall very slowly, step by step, listening for the creaks, listening for that windy whistle. Then she realizes that the whistle is almost changing into a deeper pitch, and the room is still ever so slowly getting colder and darker. And then as she's looking across the weathered wallpaper, she stops and sees that carved little marking just very faintly merging within the damask pattern. But she can see it there, just those lines peeking out. She tries her best to peel off the wallpaper from that spot, as she can see on the other side that there is now a very clear etching in the blackened wood behind that wallpaper, that same etching on the effigy. She feels just the hair stick up on the back of her neck, as now the building almost seems to creak and moan, uncovering this little secret. She steps back and goes to her bag, being wary that she does have equipment in there to try and protect herself with. So she picks it up and goes back towards the etching, and now is starting to work at peeling off the wallpaper. But as she does, let me see if she will notice anything. What she notices is odd markings on the floor, as though something is dragged. But what she does not notice is something else present in that area. But she does smell more vividly now that the wallpaper is being pulled back. The smell of burnt wood, old wood, and almost cinder-y smell. And she goes back and starts examining the wall, kind of pressing and indenting areas, trying to find what could have been moving, if it was in fact the wall itself, or if maybe it was something was here before. She does not know. Roll, roll, roll. Alright. But she's clawing at the different grooves and edges, seeing if maybe this might be a secret wall, but she does not find any sort of imprint or indentation that suggests a hidden door. So she steps back, looking at where this little carved mark is in the wall, looking around it. She does realize this room is getting way too dark for the lamps that are present in there. And once again, she goes about trying to get the wicks burning brighter. But as she turns the little knobs to loosen more wick up, again, the light does not change. So she just grabs the lamp from the table and walks back up to the carving in the wall. Her papers and charcoal are ruined, so she cannot get an imprint of this. So she just tries her best to make a mental note. And then she goes towards the door and tries to get out. As she jiggles the knob, there seems to be no give. It's as though she's locked in. She keeps trying and keeps trying to push on the door and begins to bang on it, saying, "Hey!" And as she bangs on the door, her body is now getting chilled to the bone. And the flames that were once warm with a glow have turned almost cold themselves, getting such an off blue-white hue. And Verona keeps trying to push her body on the door, trying to force it open, trying to bang it open. And let's see. She's making a lot of racket, but right now the door just does not want to open up. Potentially it is fully locked. But amongst the drafts of the room, she does hear a soft murmuring of a voice. And she stops and looks about, trying to figure out where it could potentially be coming from. There is a lot of drafts happening in this space, a lot of kind of cracks in the walls. It's either could be a adjoining room, it could be above her, it could even be below her. So you're going to try and do a quick gather information. She is unfortunately entering. Though trained as a detective, you can still very much panic when ethereal things begin to happen about you. And as she tries to get a better read on where these voices are coming from, we keep rolling on wasting resources. This poor girl. Her bag, she just feels it kind of drop. But now that the room has gotten so dark, she can't see where everything went. She just ends up kicking it about and in a mad scramble trying to pull everything back into her bag. but she very quickly grabs what she can to feel out, stands back up. And what shall I do here? She is going to try, as in the darkness of the space coming in and everything starting to feel almost enclosing on her, she's going to try and what role would this be? What would be a good thing for this? Maybe something with heart. She is one of the occult. She has the wood effigy from the evidence. So she very quickly, feeling it out in the dark, places it on the table as she very panicking, rapidly trying to feel for it, and places it down. Feeling out where the front of the figure would be and puts it up. She then takes the lamp, the one that was she was still having from before, quickly stands back up. And she's going to throw it down on the effigy on the table. Let me see how this will go. If it's good or not. So she tries and throws it on the table, but it kind of just clinks and then rolls off. The oil starting to spread around on the wooden floor, and the flame still just almost barely clinging to life in the wick at this point, unnaturally so. The dice just do not comply. And now we will see what sort of price this will come about. Ooh, an 8. Separated from something or someone. So Veronica, rapidly so, tries it again. She goes and reaches for the lamp, seeing where that little light is, brings it back up. And as she goes to throw it down, she can just, even though it is dark and she can barely see where the effigy is, she looks at it and it's no longer there. She very quickly starts scanning the room, and the murmuring, low and almost guttural amongst the whistles of the drafty wind, she looks around trying to see if she sees any shadow or figure or ghost. This time, she's just desperately now. She goes straight for the door once more to try and crack it open. Another full body slam into it. The hinges do whine and creak a bit, and another big thump as she throws her old body into it, but it does wreck her shoulder and she feels like it rolled and kind of cramp into her collarbone, just feeling the sudden, very sharp pain through the nervous system just shoot out across from her shoulder. And she cramps up her arm, holding her fist. What is going on in this room? Who is here? Who hears me? And just the moaning of the building as though it's being very much shifted by wind echoes on through the space. And I'll do another pay the price because that was a weak hit. 40. At disadvantage, we lose momentum. So feeling trapped, effigy from the scene now gone. Well, Veronica's gonna try and do the next best thing, now without the effigy. She now takes her pen that she's able to find and starts trying to carve in from memory that etching, as she can no longer reference it from the wall or from the effigy, and is still gonna try to burn everything down. She's not happy. All right. I know this says weak, but technically it would be meeting it. And 69, nice. So 9 versus 69. That's not. So she starts etching out the effigy, or the marking that was from the effigy and from the wall, and she can feel that oil from the lamp had spilled across this table. But then she quickly, as she's kneeling there, takes the lamp once more, pulling off that protective glassware and just pulls it down towards that marking. And almost instantly the fire catches and just this soft white blue glow envelops the top of the table where the oil has spilled, everywhere except where that marking is. And then the flames just continue curling up. And as Veronica steps away, her heartbeat risen, her breath shallow and sharp and rapid, she watches as this ebon wood table starts to get engulfed by this flame. And across the way, she swears she sees a form of a figure, just a silhouette of someone standing there and holding that effigy in front of it. But as she starts to focus her eyes to get a better sight on this figure, she hears some metal clanging at the door and a swift open up. And as Veronica turns a pivot, she sees the madame there, with a very shocked look on her face. Just, what in devil's name is going on in here? And as Veronica looks around, the space is back to normal, other than now this table being fully lit on fire. And Madame quickly, in just a squeak of a voice, rushes off. And a couple of folks from across the other doorways are now kind of coming in and peeking, seeing just this bright glow flame coming out from the room that Veronica is in. Veronica looks around the space. She sees her materials on the ground. She sees the wallpaper almost seemingly back in place from where she pulled it. She looks around the lounge and cannot seem to find this little effigy that she has now misplaced. And almost in a rush, not caring about the fire that she has set upon the place. She kind of pushes out from now the growing crowd of other customers of this den as they're forming at her door. So she goes out and looks for Madame, who's now coming in with like a little bucket of water and some wet blankets, rushing by, coming back to the room to throw it all onto the table to pat it out. And she's just now screaming at Veronica, as like, you could have burned down our entire establishment. You could have killed all these people. What were you thinking? What kind of detective are you? And as she's going to this outburst, Veronica just takes in that maybe the Madame herself, at least, was not present in the room with her. So that's good. The other folk that seem to be listening and watching, they seem to be well into their vices. So at least maybe no one now at the doorway. Let me see. Yes, unfortunately, there's nobody that seems to be of sound mind to interact. They all seem to be well into their vices at this point, and the Madame kind of waves them off back to the room, saying, "It's all right, it is handled. We just have someone with a very interesting kink here. You can all go on." And she very sharply turns to Veronica. Her once very friendly demeanor, though guarded, is now very much harshened. And mostly staring at her after her tirade, waiting for explanation. Veronica, I think we'll try and do a compel, as she now honestly tells what she was experiencing in the room, between the room getting darker and colder, that the whistling winds became murmurs and voices, the marking she saw on the wall, and the fact she peeled it away and it's no longer there, and now her effigy disappeared. So we'll do a heart roll. All right, dice are good. So Veronica retells what happened in the space, and the Madame having a very harsh expression. It begins to go from that hardened, like, you tried to destroy my place, you've wrecked my stuff, to, oh, what are you talking about? This is messed up. We get a momentum, and we'll have some stuff for, or a +1 for our next gather information move. So the Madame looks back to the table, and the marking that Veronica did is still in there. And Madame says, it's interesting. I remember Alicia said she liked this room specifically. She wanted this room specifically, and that her patron also had favor of this room, and didn't want anyone to interfere with what they call the energies or vibrations of the space. And I think I remember... Let's see if she does remember. 50-50 chance, let's go. Well, that made it. So the Madame does say, I think I remember seeing that marking on a letter requesting for this space specifically. And of course, very interesting information. So there was Alicia, and she had a quote-unquote patron. Of course, Veronica immediately asks about this patron, who they may be, name, role, anything. Madame, of course, well, let's see what her main goal is in this situation, because I did not roll that. A2. Find the truth. The Madame leans against the opposite wall. She says that she's never seen the patron before. They were a woman, though any features were completely obscured by a hood and a kind of cloak, dressed in dark colors, which matches what Veronica learned from one of the Minerva from the street. Of course, she was asked how often the patron came here, whether it was always with Alicia or not. I'm gonna keep doing 50-50s on here. Let's see what the dice say. So did the patron come here often? No. Was it always with Alicia when they did come? Yes. So of course, Minerva makes notes on whatever scraps she's now able to pull up, as most of her supplies are now begotten to broken state or left unfindable. But if Alicia was with this patron and only here, it's possible that this patron could be the main suspect for others. So Veronica asks if the patron had been in any other rooms, even though she was just told that this room specifically, or if she could look in the adjacent room on the other side of where that etching in the wall was. Madame graciously brings her to that opposite room and opens it up, as no one is present in there at the moment. And let's do a gather information in here. And oh, I got a mark of progress on that one. Strong hit. So let's gather information +1 from that previous hit. Oh no, a miss with a double match. Oh my goodness. So what that means mechanically is things are going to get really, really mean. And it's match 9, so this is going to be extra bad. Okay, let me see what pay the price is first, and we will address this situation here. A 32. Harmful. Okay. Madame opens the door and lets Veronica into this other space, the adjacent room, and is of course asked to leave the door open this time. And Veronica begins moving about. She goes directly to the wall that matches up to the opposite one of the other room. And as she feels it, she does feel as though the wall here isn't as sturdy. And when she taps on it, it sounds far more hollow than it should be. And as she stands there and brings her head in close, she taps. And for a split second, she hears a tap back in her same rhythm before a very sudden hit to her head as she does suffer a health from that roll. And I'll say 2, because let's be mean to ourselves. So she gets a very sharp strike in her head and is sent flying backwards as she feels bits of wood and drywall just bash into her skin. And she's sent to the ground. She hears the scream of the Weiston's madam as her body just thumps and the wood around her creaks at the direct impact. Dazed and her glasses practically shifted off her face, she looks back up and she sees just this big dark hole in the wall. She adjusts her glasses, and as she sees just blood trickling a little bit down her lenses, and she wipes off, seeing just red blood dripped and now smeared across her hand. Madame yelling out, she rushes over to Veronica and helps her back up. But Veronica's very focused on that void space. And as she peers into that darkness, she does see the depth, and she sees on the other side, very visibly, that etching. And just now acting on instinct, Veronica picks up the nearest object of whatever she could, which will be... I'm gonna do a roll for this. I have in my head what the numbers will be. So she looks almost seemingly, and she picks up a book, a very dense book that was left in the space and may have tumbled down as the wall was struck, so may have came off one of the bookshelves. But she approaches the space and holds her breath, waiting to see if she hears any more sound or breath coming through. She then peers her head in a bit and calls for the madame. She's saying, could you please bring an officer or 2 in here? They should still be by the alleyway. And the madame very rushedly nods and backs out of the room, shooing all the customers back to their spaces as once again they try and come out to see what the hell's going on. But Veronica, she steps back, looks towards the wall, and kind of using her hands trying to peel back the rest of the wall. Let me see if she's strong enough to do that on her own. Oh my goodness. How does this... The dice are the true terror. Oh, dear Veronica. She tries to pull back the wall, and splinters just seep into her hands that she wasn't anticipating. Let's see what our price is. 69, nice. Stressful. Yeah. She was struck in the head. Her which is still bleeding. She has no idea how bad that wound may be, whether it's just surface, because sometimes surface wounds can bleed a lot more than what people realize. But she's getting splinters all through her hands as she's trying to pull it back. And she feels just that cold chill and dread start to pull through her body, as we're gonna take 2 against our spirit, as she's just feeling like how close she has been at this point, the closest she has ever been through this entire investigation from the other murders, that she finally has a thread, and now it just keeps breaking apart on her. And she's trying to pull back that wood, and mindlessly just ignoring the splinters, but it's just not moving against her force. And as she's in this rabid state, another officer crept inside, comes in, and they come over to her and try and shake her out of it, pulling her back. And they're just like, Detective Clark, please, just... Are you all right? You're very much bleeding. And they put a handkerchief over her head. Yes, can you... I need that wall torn down right now. Tear it down. And the officer just kind of gives her a look and looks at the wall. And she's like, something struck me from there. Bring it down. And he brings out his baton, and the officer's now pulling out the space. She says, I just need it big enough to fit through. And she's pacing behind the officer, almost animalistically, as she's spouting off about something having come out from out there, being hit through the wall, that they may actually be so close to their main suspect and they have anticipated. And in that panic, again, once more, no one really noticing the darkness seeping into the space. As soon as the officer has it pulled apart, Veronica immediately grabs his baton and goes into the space as she's picking up one of the little oil lamps. And stepping in, this space is actually quite wide. And from the outside, from the spaces of the rooms and corridors, you'd have no idea of it being wide enough to actually have a person walk through. And she can see all of the wood under here, the main timber, the supporting beams are all that ebon wood. And it just makes an already darkened space feel so much darker and so much more repressed. She now very hurriedly starts moving through the space. We're going to do an edge to see how fast she can maneuver. Ooh, strong hit. She very instinctually moves this space. A little easier to move through solid wooden corridors than it is to move through a crowd. Leading with the light ahead of her, moving back and forth, keeping ears open, eyes open, waiting for any shift of wall, any change of sound. The whistling in this space, being of a very derelict building, is loud, almost thunderous as it echoes off the beams. But her heels click sharply. As she tries to find the direction of where whatever attacked her, whomever attacked her, if it's a whom, may lead her to. She's moving rather quickly, but we will try... What's a good roll for this? I guess we're still doing wits. As she is rushing through... I'll take a sip of water here. A weak hit. Alright, she is getting flashes of a potential where the activity is leading to scuff marks in the wood that seem too fresh for how old the burning is. She dashes along, but being a weak hit, we gotta see what the Oracle will tell us. Oh, we're getting a lot of Oracle rolls today. 26. She does suffer some damage. Okay. So she's moving about the space. And then as she goes to turn a corner, she feels a sudden drop in the floor as she's sent forward and collapses down, taking 1 to her health as she lands and kind of twists her wrist a little bit, trying to catch herself on the floor. The lamp, still held rather solidly in her hand. She gasps and stands up and looks around, and she does see she fell maybe about 5 feet or so. And she finds herself in sort of a tunnel way, and the way it's getting directed is moving down through our building here. She does hear from above voices coming from where she was. The voice of the officer, of the madame, seeming to be in loud shouts. The madame obviously screeching about what she saw happen to Veronica, and the officer constantly turning down into the wall space asking Veronica what's going on. I'm going to see if she can notice anything in this space as she peers about. A strong hit for clue gathering. This is wonderful. I've been marking off my investigations. All right. We had a couple of good things at least. So she raises up the lamp, and she does see on the floor the effigy. And when she picks it up and turns it, she does see that marking that she saw only on the one so far. And let's see if there's another clue in this space. Why not? 7, a letter or note. So as she looks about the space, this is a very old room. It may have once been the original basement of the building that this vice den was built on. And as she pulls the lamp about in front of her, she does catch a letter just kind of on the floor, seeming to have previously been crumpled up. She goes over and starts to unfurl it as she places the lamp down and tries to read it in the light. The writing is very scratchy, very quickly etched out. She does see that at the bottom there's that carving that she saw, almost done in a signature in this letter. The letter mentions new target found, new place. Place has been made. Remember to honor. It's a little PC, but it seems that this letter is associated to what may potentially be Alicia and having targeted her. But she continues to peer around the space. There's still the missing thing of what had stabbed Alicia. So whatever tool that was is still missing. But we are now in the presence of someone that not only just attacked Veronica, but also had initially stolen this effigy off of her. And now we're in this space that no one knows about until recently. So Veronica gets up, holding the lamp out and continuing to follow the walls, just trying to maintain her sense of space as she pushes forward. She does see additional ladder works that go up as she walks through this underground portion, and obviously someone seems to have made ways to get up into the walls above. Maybe there was a hidden wall network here intentionally before that maybe just the Madame may not know about. But the idea of someone lurking about within the walls, watching these people coming in to just enjoy their vices and relax after a day's work, unsettling in the least, but to know that this is an individual who has also picked someone out and murdered them just outside in the alleyway. Well, who knows what other targets they may have pulled from in here that we do not know about. I'm gonna say, since we're in almost a delve-like space, I'm gonna do a roll for that. As now, Veronica, after that initial let's get fast and find this person, slows down and starts thinking, maybe I need to be more quiet and more sneaky, as she turns down the lamp. So what I did, I'm using some of the delve stuff from Ironsworn, so that's me. My little twist. Roll in the following. So we rolled a weak hit. $26. So we've gotten some progress, as now Veronica trying her best to quietly move through the space. That music's loud. She sees just a bigger carving of the effigy as she enters a bigger area, and very softly catching edges of a statue. As she slowly approaches around, she sees before her that same carved effigy, but now as almost an altar state, carved from the lower beams of this establishment, just right out of one of the beams, this carved woman. And as Veronica stands there holding a light up to this woman, she leans into it, trying to see if she can notice any markings, trying to look about to see if maybe there's any evidence of ritual or worship. When she hears the shifting of something moving, the crunching of stone and wood, and she swiftly turns around, lamp in front of her, trying to look about the space, but only really darkness is there to greet her. It is deeply freezing, and she can just barely see the puffs of her breath being illuminated by the light. She can hear the groans of the beams of wood up above and the whistles of wind. She holds her breath. Hears movement. But she's just too slow to realize where it is coming from as another thing comes to strike at her. She gets pushed up against the wall and is now in a dark space with somebody as the lamp she was holding clatters to the floor. And we're going to quickly do some moves here. So she's going to try and move her fastest to avoid any further hits. As she feels another hand grab onto her. $36 for pay the price. Losing momentum. We're not having a good time. Veronica was thrown against the wall and she almost feels her breath escape her as a hand grabs onto her shoulder. We're in a clash state as per Irons, but I'm gonna see what kind of moves we can do for our poor Veronica. She is not carrying any weapons. Anything she had, she lost because we kept losing our supplies. She'll have to brawn her way out of the grip, so she feels the hand clamp down upon her. And she goes to try and loosen it or shove them off or even strike something. No, poor Veronica. As she tries to push off, she feels that push, and like she does touch something, but there's not a lot of solidness like a body should have. And she pushes against it, trying to get it off, and she's just not able to have the strength to push back. Let's see. 52. Her supplies, anything she has left on her, she feels them scatter about as she gets thrown off to the side again, and almost whirling banshee-like howl echoes out, piercing her ears. And as this thing still has a grip on her, she's still going to keep trying to fight back. She's not brawny, but she's still going to try. Okay. So she does shove it off and roll away. But further complications say 6. Well, faith is an interesting thing. In her mind, she's hoping that maybe the officers will come down shortly, any second now, to aid her to find and help capture the very person that's attacking her right now. And yet, as she's struggling against this fight, she doesn't hear the officer. She doesn't hear the madam. She knows she acted a little irrationally and erratically when the officer came to her aid after that hit. Who knows what they may be thinking now. But she tries her best, and now that she's a little loosened, she's going to try and be quick to get out of the situation. Yay! So, in a flash, as she feels the hand having, after thrown her to the ground, she pulls up that effigy and using the thinner end of it just kind of strikes at whoever it is in front of her. And the voice makes a howl. Just this gasping, sucking air howl, and loosens her grip on her. She, very tightly hanging onto that effigy, pulls back up and goes and lumbers for that oil lamp. And this time, for whatever reason in her mind, after everything she has gone through to this point, why not just burn this whole fucking place down? And she turns running towards the statue, and just all sense lost, she goes and tries to smash the oil lamp on the statued effigy. I'm gonna try and do it as an edge to see maybe what's a good one for this. Yeah, let us do... No, it'd be iron. We'll be doing iron because she's trying to do all of her strength into this. So she smashes the oil lamp on the statue, and she sees just the fire catch it a little bit, and the oil spill down upon it, but it's not engulfing like she had hoped. She hears the gasp of someone around her as she pulls back and looks around. She's out of supplies, so she can't tinder anything. But as she peers around, she sees a cloaked figure standing there. They seem to be kind of hunched and holding where Veronica stabbed them with the effigy. And now that Veronica has a better sense of where they are and in this space, as very slowly the fire starting to catch on the statue, though not as rapidly as she had hoped. She's going to, as swiftly as possible, try and take advantage of their initial pain and get them toppled over. Oh, a strong hit with a match. Finally, we kept having misses with the match. And the music works as everything slows in Veronica's mind. In a flash, the fire seems to brighten up. And though the space is oppressive and cold and dark, Veronica lunges forward. And knowing and seeing that she's smaller than this individual, she goes in low, taking advantage of their hunched posture, and she just slams into the base of their legs, sending them toppled forward. She then takes that effigy and strikes it across their head. And also we get a bonus since they're now toppled over after that double match. Why not? So she does crack the effigy on this individual's head, and they howl out. And for a moment, she almost thought the effigy just sunk through, like going through a mist. But she does feel an impact as it bounces back up with her arm. And she tries to get on top of this person into an almost wrestling maneuver to keep them down and from moving about. See, that's a pretty good move, honestly. But she's now trying to wrestle in the space, now having to use her brawn to get this individual under control. It is difficult. Momentum is getting hard to keep between the pain of her head, the pain her body feels being racked against a wall, the splinters in her hands. It's now starting to get that stinging numbness through her. And still no one is showing up to help her. But she tries her best to keep this person down. And let's see if she can observe anything in this moment as the statue's starting to get brighter as it's catching fire. She does see that this person, just in the glint of light getting caught on their figure and their skin underneath the hood as it's kind of drifted back a bit off their head, it seems to be another woman. However, as Veronica's taking them in this very quick flash of a moment, her eyes are pitch black. There seems to be just dark lines of veins coming through her face and underneath her skin and kind of pulse. And that etched marking deep set in her forehead. And as Veronica is almost taken aback in this moment, still struggling against this person, they do almost this banshee wail in her face. So many matches tonight. Woo! Veronica once again takes up that statue, and with almost a screaming roar, she cracks it again on this person's face and knocks him out. She sighs, stands up, and observes the person as now the statue is sintering and the flames looking up, the beam of which it was burnt or carved out of, and now starting to catch on other beams. Of course, the smoke at this point is filling the space. And Veronica, coughing, moves to try and find the way she went. She does see that there's now this kind of rock half covering the entryway. So she's going to try and force it open. As she's starting to hear voices, familiar voices from the other side. But she's just too weak. The smoke fills the room and she begins coughing as she collapses down to her knees, still leaning on that stone. Her head is throbbing and she just hears her heartbeat in her ears. She screams out, hoping someone can hear her voice. And then as she looks back to where that person was, they're gone. All is left is just this black scorched mark on the floor. in the shape, silhouette of the effigy. Veronica keeps screaming out as the flames continue licking up the beams and smoke filling the room. She keeps trying to push and push and push against the stone in her way. But it just won't move. So all she can do is scream out, hoping her voice can carry through the hall as the smoke fills the space and she feels it filling into her lungs. The oracle says, "We're taking harm." Veronica's vision starts to go dark. She hears her heartbeat flutter at speed for a moment before it starts to flutter back down. And against that heartbeat, she hears these ghostly murmurs through the dark, as now the bright glow of the flames seem to almost dither out to her. And I'll do this roll from Ironsworn, the face death roll, to see what happens. Veronica goes to take a gasp, but nothing but smoke is now in the space. And her body collapses to the floor. She puts a hand against the stone, feeling the coldness of it as her vision blackens. But as she starts to lose all sense of self, she feels a cold hand grasp hers, and something of wood put into it, into her left hand, as she is now placed on her back. And darkness encompasses her consciousness. I am going to see, as supernatural things can happen in this world, to see if maybe a ghostly echo of her will be remaining in the space that she can give a final route for the investigation for those that she is leaving behind. 50-50 chance, let's go. Roll the die. So 50-50, 4 or greater is what we're looking for. Nope. So officers managed to open up the doorway, but it's too late at this point. And of course, what they find is a grisly scene of Detective Veronica Clark having suffered head injury, seeming to have suffered physical struggle, some marking on her skin showing that sign of struggle, especially around her shoulders, her neck. And now she has been found with one of those effigies in the very same way that many of the victims she was investigating before. And that is how dear Detective Veronica Clark ends this investigation, unfortunately with death and not having been able to solve the case completely. Whew. That was very interesting turn of events. Yes, the dice giveth, the dice taketh away, mostly they taketh away. However, yes, this was probably the most, not only misses, but the most misses with matches I've had in an Ironsworn based game. As I said towards the beginning, I do play Ironsworn in my weekly thing. So I've had so many of this. I think the dice really wanted a mean tale to be told tonight. And I was starting to lean towards that creepy, like maybe there's a ghost. Who knows? And then yes, let's just go in that direction, and a soul is claimed. Wow. All right. Well, since now our investigator is gone, that is our story for tonight. So thank you so much for being here. Big shout out to Yui Gorgon, who has been here this whole time in chat. So thank you so much for being here. Your game is delightful. I, of course, love anything related to Victorian Gothic aesthetic. So I was very excited to incorporate this and play this out on stream. Oh man, I could see how this can go many different directions, and I'll need to play with someone else now to see how that turns out. I want to solve this, and it's going to be different every time because it's up to interpretation how you envision your investigation going. So once again, for all those watching live on Twitch, if you haven't done the command code Ghostlight in chat, that would bring up the itch link. Otherwise, you can just go on itch and look for Yui Goron. That's YUIGARON, where you can find Swarm by Ghostlight as well as all their other games. Great times to be had, of course. And I believe you have a bundle right now, right? That is in for ghostly, spooky times. So take advantage of the bundle then. We got nothing else to say. I'm Natalie. I've been our detective for this evening and have found my untimely death. And this was so much fun. I am a variety streamer, so if you want to be here just for tabletop games, that's Wednesdays. Otherwise, I do a Pokemon Nuzlocke Mondays. I do art Thursdays and Tuesdays in the afternoons usually. Sometimes life gets in the way though. And then for month of October, Fridays, I'm playing spooky games. And of course, if you liked anything I do, because I'm not sponsored, I'm not paid for this. I'm just having fun with games that other people make, because why not? And why not show off my skills as a player, performer, and attempting to grow myself in terms of a player, performer, and storyteller. It's lots of fun. I love doing this. It's great. So feel free to find me on ko-fi.com/ghostcandle. I have digital emote packs in the shops. I do art commissions and all the like. And or if you just like what I do and want to tip me, you can tip me there. That's a thing. But otherwise, that is our story for this evening, our spooky tale. And I thank you all for joining me on this adventure. And as a treat, how about we take a quick look at the promo for next week's adventure. See you all next time.